Hello my friends, and welcome to another Bojanian vlog. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing a night entry today, so I'd mix it up a bit, but today I wanted to talk to you guys about what to do when you're in the midst of pain, basically. I've already talked about this in previous entries, but I thought that I would take the opportunity to dive a bit deeper into the kind of experience that you might be experiencing right now. Not to be presumptuous, but if I were to guess, you're probably feeling a bit melancholy right now, and if not, if you've clicked on this video, then maybe my tone has induced that melancholy, and sorry, that's not my intention, but a lot of us, nowadays feel a certain degree of uncertainty. And not only that, but we may have some issues that we have to deal with, not so pleasant issues. Problems in reaching a dream of ours. Trying to find out what the fuck we have been placed here to do. If we're to live, then we have to find a way forwards. But that involves coming out of whatever life situation that we're currently stuck in. Whether that be problems with other people, our relationships with other people, family, whatever the case may be, we often find ourselves in the thick of desperation, right? And it's a funny thing because desperation and despair themselves are not something that that last forever, right? And I'm sure I've mentioned this before in previous vlog entries, but when you experience pain and sorrow, the very first thing is that it doesn't serve us to think of those things as wrong, right? And secondly, they don't last forever. Because emotions are simply a fleeting experience, right? And so this is the thing that we all wrestle with, right? It is, how do I meet with the world and meet with myself? And I feel like I'm kind of not really doing a very good job here of making any sense, really. And perhaps that's a problem of mine, is that I try to sound eloquent in the way that I present these things. And like, to an extent, it's kind of part of how I communicate my ideas. And to be honest with you, it used to be okay. It used to be okay. You know, when things were admittedly a lot simpler in life. You know, I hadn't quite gotten to this stage where I'm kind of out of the fantasy land of just dreaming about the possibilities of life, having my spiritual awakening. But now I'm thrust into the real world, and I'm having to actually face my own darkness, my own ugliness, the ugliness of others, the ugliness of the world, and this constant chaos of the world that pulls you in every which direction, and you try your best to make sense of it. You know, you come up with rationalizations. And I say rationalizations, but you come up with principles and ways of articulating the so-called kind of higher truths of reality, right? And I'm going to go a bit further in the next entry about this. You know, this entry isn't going. This is kind of a bit beyond the scope of this entry. But nevertheless, you get hit at a certain point in life very quickly, and you're back in the chaos, and no matter how much you try to think your way out of it, it's no good. Right. I don't know what. I apologize. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say in this entry. I just wanted, if anything, to reach out to you guys, really. Some way of reaching out. You might detect a hint of self-hate right now. And it is that very thing that I'm trying to address, because, and bear with me, I hope this entry turns out okay, you don't, of course, if you're not finding this entry very helpful, you're welcome to. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that, but definitely self-hate right now, right? But I feel this a lot, just using my own experience. I feel this a lot. And it's strange, because I've come to a place in my spiritual kind of exploration where, and I say spiritual exploration, but it kind of goes a bit deeper than that, it's also my emotional exploration. So I mentioned in previous entries how the way that I look at spirituality, is that it is comprised of the ideological, so, perspectives, paradigms, that kind of thing. More, space-time, or just the overall structure of existence, the blueprinting of existence. That's one side of spirituality. But the other side, which, is one of my central things that I talk about, I hesitate to say teach, because I'm not really sure I'm teaching anything, really. I like to say that both from an egoic standpoint, but also that's kind of my intention ish, aside from kind of running my mouth. Yeah, the other component is emotionality. It is sensation. It is feeling. it is basically anything that science essentially can't touch. Right. That is what forms spirituality. You know. And so, I'm at a stage in my spiritual and emotional exploration where I'm okay with the idea and the experience of things like self-hate. Of course, I'm nowhere near, a flawless execution, but I'm at the stage where I look at something like self-hate and I'm like, well, that's pretty normal. Sure, it's still one of the most disgusting and painful things you could experience. Barring, like physical torture or like things of a physical nature, right? But I'm at the stage where it's like, I look at self-hate and I'm like, self-hate is here. And it's totally okay, because I've been through it enough times to realize that it is just another expression of your soul. Many things that we have traditionally looked at from a spiritual perspective with an almost, well, sometimes quite blatantly dismissive kind of a view within spirituality is things, such as resistance, things such as self-hate, things such as judgment, even some of the more kind of base emotional kind of states that we might find ourselves in, such as anger, jealousy, resentment, revenge. But you walk the spiritual warrior path long enough to realize that those things are actually okay, right? And yet, sometimes we don't feel okay about them. It's really weird, right? It almost feels as though when you're on the spiritual path and you have that awareness and you have been through your feelings and developed your EQ, so to speak, it almost sets you at odds with other people, because they're worried about things that make sense, but they don't actually signify a big deal to you. Things like such as self-hate and anger and jealousy like that. It's like, they're not such a big deal to you. And yet, the things that you actually worry about, such as, what is my ultimate purpose of being here? Essentially, if this is all that there is, this endless kind of oscillation between joy or love and despair, you could say, and pain and contrast, then why am I here? What am I here to manifest? Why is there such a suffocating gap between physicality and my spirituality? You're like banging your head against the wall, about these things, and other people don't even think about them. So it's a very strange journey, or rather, like, it puts you in a very strange place where, yeah, it just puts you at odds with, I guess, the overall narrative that people kind of play by. But anyway, this is me. I'm trying to so what do we do when we encounter pain and despair, and we feel that pain kind of welling up within us, and you feel as though you're not normal, and you feel as though you can't speak like most people fucking can. You start feeling that frustration about yourself because you can't function like a normal fucking human being. You don't know why you're here. You know what makes you so different from the people around you. And yet, that is invitation for more self-loathing, because it's like, now I'm being a fucking spiritual weirdo who thinks he's special. You know? If you're like me, and I'm guessing you are because you're on YouTube and you're watching this video, you probably watched like many people and they give you differing viewpoints. Some people say that fuck spirituality, you know. And if you're a spiritual woo-woo kind of a person, your head is stuck up your ass, basically. But then you hear the perspective that no, like spirituality, or like you being sensitive is actually a good thing. But then you're like, is it though? Is the fact that I'm so sensitive and spiritually focused such a fucking good thing? Is it though? When you feel pain that like a lot of other people can't feel, and you know that you can't share it with them, and you know that there's a fucking gap between what you know spiritually and what people understand on an everyday kind of a level. It's like, what is you saying that stuff going to accomplish? What is you telling people that like the pain that they go through is all necessary, and one day they'll look back on it and they'll recognize the value of that component within the grand scheme of things? What is that going to help people with? What is you telling people that death is the ultimate salvation going to do for people? If anything, they might think that you're some kind of a psycho for saying things like that. And then, what if that's just your own rationalization that keeps piling and piling and piling up? The if else statements in your head. You haven't even done anything, and yet like you've already imagined this scenario. What do you do? I don't know. That's the kind of despair I feel, and I'm wondering if you feel that as well. You know, sometimes it's like you feel alone as a sensitive person, and yet you've heard other people saying that being a sensitive emo prick is not healthy and is lame. Enough times for you to be like, maybe I shouldn't be emo. Maybe people don't like me being emo, but it's like, but maybe that's all that I am. Maybe I can't help like being focused on a different level from most people. You know? And yet, all you want is just to live a peaceful life, honestly. And yet, yet at other times, you feel as though like, okay, no, I'm here to live. I'm here to experience contrast. And then you have to go through the whole fucking pendulum swing again. Yeah. What do you do when you're faced with this kind of pain? You just take a deep breath and you sink into it. And you let that pain crush you. And crush you. And crush you. And you focus on it. And you let your breathing become erratic. You let your face twitch. You let your body shake with pain and anger. And you imagine whatever scenario you want in your head, even if it isn't pleasant to talk about or to openly admit. And you let yourself cry if you need to, or shed tears or whatever. And you put yourself through that pain. Without knowing what that's going to do ultimately, what it's going to accomplish, whether or not crying over things will ever help anything. And you take that and you jump. And so I've talked about things such as shadow work and generally how to be present with your feelings. And it's difficult enough sometimes for spiritual people to even just connect with the things that they love. Or anyone really, it doesn't have to be spiritual people, but like anyone, It takes someone like me or another guru to tell people, it's okay to follow your joy. You might be scared that things will be taken away from you if you connect with the things you love, but it's okay, Baby step it. And it's hard enough to do that, let alone jumping into your darkness. The stuff that you know that you have no logical solution for. No means of resolution. Your fear of dying, your fear of being essentially dominated and violated, and for the world to be utterly destroyed, and for everything that you've done here and experienced and thought and spread on to the world to mean absolutely nothing in the end. That despair that prompts you to go and drink alcohol or smoke a cigarette or masturbate or even yell in your car alone, recording it on your phone. What do you do when you face that kind of pain? You jump into it. Because that is at least something you can do to move through the pain. Kind of a weird entry, crappy. See the self-hate? But this is a reality that we all need to face. I do it, you do it. Famous people do it. People that you look up to. They also come to self-hate. They also come to doubt. They also come to fear. They also come to selfishness. The kind of selfishness that means profiting at the expense of other people. We also come to it. We all have ugly flaws and warts that we don't want anyone to see. And when you get to the point where you run out of tactics, Again, tactics is fine. Anything that you do is fine, ultimately. But I'm giving you something that you can do when all else fails. Aside from ending your own life, of course. And I say that with solemnity, like I'm not joking. I'm dead serious about that. But at the same time, I don't mean it to be really grave when I say things like that. It's just, sometimes there's no pleasant way of saying things. And yet, the irony is that when you face those things, you actually move past them. Whereas someone who treats those things as if they are something that must be avoided at all costs, you know the drill. I'm sure you do. That's kind of the thing that fucks us up as sensitive people. Like there are these really extreme societal views that certain things are absolutely untouchable and taboo, and so we steer away from them. And yet sometimes the only way that we can be free of the fear of these things is to face them directly. Things such as medication or drugs or addiction or even violence, rape, death, torture, whatever dark thing you want to face. And initially, we as sensitive people, I know this almost as for a fact, even though like I only know it for myself, is that like we jump into these things almost forcing ourselves to kind of like be overwhelmed by it. It's just like it's unexplainable. It's just like that's just what we do as sensitive people. We just kind of launch ourselves into things because we think that somehow that means that we are doing the right thing, I guess you could say. And yet, ironically enough, it does work out for us like sometimes. We face something and we face more darkness than the average person. And when I say darkness, I mean emotional darkness. Because, God forbid, like if I actually threw myself into physical danger, I don't think I can ever handle that. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, what if I were to like put myself in physical danger just so that I could experience it? I feel that itch sometimes and like it kind of fucks with me a bit, but like, I don't know if I could do that. But I do know that what I do on proactively almost is to face darkness. And again, I mean emotional darkness. I mean fear and chaos and anger and fear and animalistic impulse. That's what we face as sensitive people. And then when we have come to a point where we are inundated by these and we feel like almost killing ourselves, but not quite, what do we do? What do we do? When we look upon the world and it's like, fuck. What do we do when we have that kind of pain on our shoulders, in our hearts, penetrating us? We face it. We face it. We let it kill us. And of course, I'm kind of being dramatic in this entry. I guess that was kind of my intention. I wasn't really sure how I'd make this entry. Most of these entries are just, nowadays I just kind of wing them, honestly. For better or for worse. But yeah. And just to wrap this up, I guess, if you want a practical resource for doing this, I highly recommend The Completion Process by T.O. Swan. I'm not super familiar with it. In fact, I'm just kind of newly acquainted with this process. But like, essentially, it is her core kind of process for doing shadow work and facing one's darkness, or spirituality 2.0, as she calls it also. But yeah, she has a book on that. I'll put a link in the description. But essentially, whenever you feel pain, whatever knee-jerk response you have to pain, the first thing you need to learn, I guess, is that it's okay to have whatever impulse. Because whatever impulse will happen. You know, whether that be junk food or like escapism or like whatever it might be, sleeping around. Whatever knee-jerk response you have to your pain, it will happen. And so you have the choice of, do I judge myself or do I not? And after enough times of judging yourself, you realize it's only making things worse. So you learn to not judge yourself too harshly about things, because you're only human, right? And by extension, we're all kind of human. We all have flaws. Even like the people we look up to, you know, we're all human. And so when you encounter that pain, which is going to be frequent, it's going to be frequent. You have this process, which really is essentially, whenever you feel triggered or whenever you feel pain, you let the pain rise up within you. And this is a bit difficult to do at first, because like we're so used to what's called dissociation, which is essentially to kind of numb. It's like a subconscious numbing of the pain, right? You know, and we tend to do this, you know, in conjunction with like physical escaping. So like, you know, whether that be, again, you know, substance, medication, you know, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it might be, or like media, you know, entertainment, masturbation. But like also but like the thing that happens energetically, emotionally, is that like we subconsciously numb the pain, almost as if like we're looking away. So like, you know, the analogy is like we're kind of like turning away from like the mess that's here. There's some messy, ugly shit happening right here, and we're turning our heads away subconsciously, you know, by reflex, because it's too painful to look at. But what shadow work ultimately is, what I am advocating here, what Thiel's completion process is about, is training ourselves to look back at the pain. And what this feels like emotionally is like breathing deeply and pushing that feeling of pain up, and letting it burn you, basically. And the more that you do this, and in general, the more that you tap into your sensitivity, as I put it, the more that you feel and like essentially cultivate a willingness to feel, tapping into your sensitivity, essentially. The less that you will fear the process, and the more that you will see the value in it, and the more that you will recognize it as something that you can use for yourself whenever you need to use it, right? And the beauty of it is that, like, again, it's something that you can use, and you know it's there. You can just tap into your pain. It's like, what do you do? Like, you know, prior to this, like, we're all like, oh man, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I just want the pain to go away, but it won't go away. And but like, now you can just face your pain. Just go into it. Just let it come up. Let it burn you. Let yourself shiver and shake and cry if you need to. Even just shout and scream, or whatever comes up, right? You know that you can do that. And when you do it, it provides relief. And true relief. Because if we're all honest, if I'm honest, that's kind of what life is kind of about. We like to think, you know, that like there's this kind of nirvana that you reach where like essentially you never have to self-medicate anymore, and like you never have to relieve yourself. And you can attain a state of like nothingness, basically, where like nothing happens. But like, no, you know, you're here, you're human, you're physical, and life is about tension and release. That's it, man. And the healthiest way to release without killing yourself, as gruesome as that sounds, is to go into your pain. And again, the beauty of this process is you don't have to do anything drastic. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to kill someone else. You don't even have to like resort to violence or like anything rash or aggressive. You don't have to. All you need to do is sink into the feeling and let yourself fucking cry it out. And you'll be kind of amazed, like I was, like I continually am. It's like, because like when you're in the thick of it, you're like, you know, like going to my feelings is not going to work, you know, because you're too focused on like the physical aspect of it and how you can't control the physical aspect of it. But every single time you drop into your pain, the more that you realize is like, I can resolve this. And as a result, you know, I did an entry that was talking about like rethinking how we perceive karma. And this is kind of part of that, you know, like the more that you are able to face your pain, like the less applicable becomes the natural way of doing things, where like we have to it's like an eye for an eye kind of a thing in a physical sense. The more that you do this emotional stuff, you know, wrestling with your emotions and your subconscious and all of that stuff, you realize more and more that like that kind of thing isn't necessarily necessary, you know. Like, we don't have to punch someone in the face just because they punched us in the face. We could. It might happen. It probably will happen. But, like, another option you have is before things get too drastic, you can just sink into your pain. You know, be angry if you need to be. But you don't necessarily have to do anything. You just have to sink into your feelings. Or at least, that's what I've discovered, you know. I'm not saying that that's the perfect answer, but like that's what I've come to discover, and it's something that I'm sharing with you guys in this video. So cool. Again, when I wing videos, I have like this kind of like glazed over like version of like this perfect video I'm gonna do, but like it always turns out messier than I imagined it to be, because like the thing with, again, you might discover this if you ever do this kind of thing that I'm doing, like, you know, speaking, is the act of synthesizing knowledge, particularly intuitive knowledge, into language, spoken language, leaves a lot to be desired. You know, it's like when you have a picture of like a spiritual truth, let's just say, or like, you know, a particular realization, you know, it is very much, there may be like a semblance of language in your head as like a sort of like a faint anchor point. You might have words come up, but like ultimately it is more fluid. It is more kind of like non-verbal, the way that like the knowledge kind of swirls it within you. But then when you actually have to articulate it, it becomes a whole new story. Like, you know, and if you're not in the highest vibration, or if you haven't had much practice doing it, it's like it always comes out less perfect than you wish it, than you hope. Because like in your head it's like, oh my god, I know exactly what I'm going to say. But then when you actually have to say it and use actual words, it leaves a lot to be desired, man. So I guess maybe that's why I'm in this like a self-hating mood right now, is because like I'm like, fuck up. All I wanted was to make an entry where like, even if it's just to kind of have like a channel of empathy between myself and whoever's watching this. I know it's kind of lame. I'm talking into a camera. This is a video you're watching on YouTube. It's not very personal. It's not very warm, but like at the very least, if I am to do anything, like I might as well kind of try this, you know, share my pain essentially, because that's all I can do, is to share my perspective. But like I'm hoping that at least my understanding is somewhat accurate, in that like there are other people out there like myself And hopefully a lot more people like myself who are going through the same thing. And I'm hoping that basically this entry gives a bit of the sense that we are not alone, I guess. Anyway, that's this entry done. Yeah, be strong, my friends. And when you're not feeling strong, I don't know. I think we are moving into an era where, like, yeah, the head has to go. The head is good, but there's too much of it. We rely so much on the head, even in the way that we communicate. And like, it drives me insane. I'm sure it drives you insane. And you know, you can't just coexist with nature. You have to use this. And it's like, it's the most traumatic thing ever. But yeah, I'm hoping that we'll get there, you know, like, let's love more, think less, and whatever happens, happens. If there is going to be a major global conflict, there's not a lot we can do about that, but like, what we can do, at least on an individual basis, is to like, entrain with love, you know, embrace our ugliness, you know, our baseness as animals, and let whatever arise come up, and love it, as in, you know, in Matt Kahn's words. So anyway, I'll love and leave you guys with that, and I hope you found this entry insightful. If not, I apologize. But yeah, thank you for watching if you did, and yeah, I hope you guys are having a day. I'm not gonna say good or bad, just, yeah, you know what I mean. So cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will catch you guys in the next entry. Peace out, guys.